Terrorist attacks are increasingly simple, yet ruthless. In this context, soft targets are particularly vulnerable. Typical soft targets include, among others, schools, religious facilities, or sports stadiums. Attacks against such targets are relatively easy to execute due to their open access and limited security. The GCTF elaborated the Antalya Memorandum to guide governments and private industry in developing policies and programs to protect citizens from terrorist attacks on soft targets. Knowing the enemy is a core principle in protecting soft targets. This requires a continuous process of risk assessment. Soft targets are not specific and can potentially be any place where large numbers of people gather. For this reason, organizing protection should be dynamic, focused, and geographically sensitive. Governments and their industry partners can learn a good deal about terrorist tactics and methods of attack by reading terrorist propaganda. In online magazines and social media platforms, terrorist groups suggest tactics and give instructions on the use of weapons and the construction of explosive devices. Along with the primary focus on the most likely methods of attack, governments need to be mindful of new technologies and unexpected tactics to anticipate less obvious threat developments. During the risk assessment, it is also essential to identify and prioritize targets. Not all targets are equal. Successful attacks on certain target categories, such as schools or certain religious facilities, could have profound psychological consequences and adverse political consequences. Decision makers in risk management should keep this in mind when allocating resources. Many of the key principles that governments follow when protecting critical infrastructure against terrorist attacks, such as power grids, can also be effective for protecting soft targets. Sometimes, soft targets and critical infrastructure overlap. For example, soft targets may also include diplomatic buildings, or inversely, critical infrastructure may have relatively limited security, like soft targets. In such cases of overlap, protection efforts should be aligned. Based on a risk assessment, decision makers will be able to identify the right tool for the right circumstance. For example, placing barriers in high-profile public events and using mobile technology such as X-ray machines at airports, sports matches, and festivals. Another approach is to work with behavior detection, assuming that the potential attacker shows signs of excessive fear and stress. Behavior detection can be enhanced by artificial intelligence tools. While some soft targets are government-run, such as national museums or train stations, most soft targets are largely privately owned and operated. Effective security, therefore, requires a strong and sustained partnership between government and private owners. Governments can raise industry awareness through clearly worded websites, manuals, handouts, and posters that target specific industry audiences. They can also organize private-public training, including various levels of government. Tabletop exercises or simulations are an affordable and useful way to acquire information for updating procedures. The use of red teams, who simulate how terrorists think and plan their operations, can expose vulnerabilities and assist security officials in examining and improving their response activities. The public should also be educated in what to look for and encouraged to say something when they see something. One person, a tour guide, a truck driver, a passing citizen, can avert an attack and save many innocent lives. Governments should not only make sure the public knows what to look for and who to call, but also put processes in place to receive, review, and respond to public reports. To facilitate this, states may want to establish a centralized program to encourage meaningful reporting. The challenge is to provide citizens with information that will enable them to make judgments about their own security without contributing to a so-called threat fatigue. In other words, there needs to be a communication plan that avoids both over or under inflating the threat. Do you want to know more about the protection of soft targets in a counterterrorism context? You can read the full text of the Antalya Memorandum at www.thegctf.org. cctf.org.